Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Zoom training. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and we're going to get started. My name is Pablo Avila. I'm from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and thank you for joining us today for this session. I have my colleague Oscar Cortez from the center as well, who will be helping me monitor the chat as we move along in the session. If you're joining us from a computer, I invite you to check the chat feature. It should be at the bottom of your screen. I posted a welcome message, and if you could state your name and your department so that we can get started. As we move along in the session, I encourage you to use the chat feature so that you can post questions as we move along. Let me go ahead and this session will cover the following. This is a level 2 session. In thinking about the support that faculty have been asking for in terms of using Zoom, we divided our offerings in 2 segments, 2 sections. The level 1 workshop covered the basics in terms of how to sign in, how to schedule a meeting, how to share a meeting. I will go over that in just a moment, that agenda. But this particular session will cover what you see in the screen. We're going to take a look at the personal meeting ID and what that is on Zoom and how that differs from the regular scheduling meeting process. We're going to be looking at how to use Zoom for office hours. I'm going to be showing you the environment in the Zoom call so that you can potentially use this for your meetings with students. We're also going to take a look at the polling feature. And we're going to see how it works so that you can potentially use that in your classes. And we're going to end with some tips and recommendations. Like I said in the chat room, if you're just joining us, my colleague Oscar is going to help me monitor the chat room so that we can raise and tackle questions as we move along. All participants have been muted for the purposes of this activity. Towards the end, there will be a chance for a Q&A. For you to ask some questions. Here is the level 1 workshop that I mentioned. This is the previous workshop. There's still 1, 2, 3 more sessions. I'm going to share the links at the very end of the session. Don't worry if you still haven't signed up. You can continue to sign up to this if you still have already done it. If you have done it already and you still want to do it again, they cover the very basics for getting started with Zoom. Now, what we will do today, this is a demo session. So I will be going over specific features that I mentioned already in our agenda. And attendees, all of you are encouraged to use the chat feature so that you can post questions or comments. My colleague Oscar is going to help me monitor those and make sure that we answer all of the questions as quickly as we can and as best as we can. In putting together this session, we realized that there's plenty of resources. So what I have done is we have put together all of the resources in this document that you can access. It's publicly available and it contains all of the links. And let me just go ahead and click in here. You should be able to still see my screen. This is a resource document that we have put together. It's publicly available. You can share this with others if you want. And these are the links to the registration for level 1 and level 2. This is level 2. If you want to do level 1, please go ahead and click on the link to register. You can also find the slides that I'm going over right now already hyperlinked here in case you want to have that as a resource. And a little further down, you're going to see plenty of more resources that I will refer to as we develop the session. And again, this is publicly available. You can feel free to share this with others if you want, if you think that others will benefit from it. There's some resources as well at the bottom that I will share and I will reference to as we move along. This link, let me just very quickly post it on the chat. If you have access to the chat on your computer, you should be able to see the link now. So, oops. There you go. So what we're going to be doing today is a demonstration of many of these features. You can follow along by using this resource document, and a recording of this is being recorded, and a recording of this will be shared later whether it is you who want to revisit segments of this session or you want to share this with others. Completely open. We're going to post this on the CTL's YouTube channel as well. So a couple of quick points. We have received multiple questions, and many of them are about very specific areas. You access your CUNY Zoom account, faculty and staff and students, from this portal. We're going to take a look at that in just a moment, cuny.zoom.us. There's plenty of resources that the Zoom platform already has for all users in the world, and it's very helpful, very specific, and the link, it's right there. We're going to visit that link as well so that you can see it. And there's plenty of quick how-to videos there in case you're looking for something very specific. There has been a lot of questions also about storage when it comes to cloud recording. The cloud storage, as per what we heard from IT, is limited, and each user should limit their usage to 1 gigabyte. This is cloud storage, all right? That's why local recording, and I can show you this later, the local recording, it's recommended over cloud storage. Now, how do you share recordings with your students, you may be wondering? Level 1 workshop covers that, but I can tell you very briefly, CUNY offers Dropbox service, and IT told us that it's 1 TB of storage per user, which is a lot, and it's great. You can share all of your resources via your Dropbox folder, and you can create a link for your students to access. And there's an email address. All faculty and staff are encouraged to write to the email address zoomhelp@lagcc.cuny.edu. The IT staff will be monitoring that, and they can address any specific questions that you may have about using your Zoom account. So let me just show you this very quickly, and then we're going to jump straight into the browser so that we can start the hands-on part of this session. And the personal meeting room is your personal meeting room, always reserved for you, and you can access it with a unique meeting ID. You by now probably are familiar with Zoom having meeting IDs and passcodes, and sometimes the meeting IDs are different for different meetings. Every user has the ability to set up a specific meeting ID, and it has the sequence of a phone number. So if you have your meeting ID memorized, your personal meeting ID, you will always be able to access to this personal room. And you can invite others as you wish. It's always recommended to use it with people that you regularly meet with. So in this case, we're going to apply that to office hours, but in case you have meetings with colleagues, you can use this as well. We're going to take a look at our accounts in just a moment, and we're going to take a look at the personal meeting ID, our personal link, and also the settings for that. How is this different from scheduling a regular meeting, you may be wondering? There really is no difference other than the meeting ID. It's very unique, and you can set it up. You can set it up so that it doesn't change all the time, and that way you always remember. You don't always have to schedule a meeting. If you're meeting with someone on Tuesday at 7 p.m., you don't have to schedule a meeting. You can just tell them, meet me in this, in my personal meeting ID, my personal meeting room. You give them the ID, and they'll be able to access that. We're going to take a look at that in just a moment. So what I'm going to do now is, okay, so let's move things around. If you go to cuny.zoom.us, this will be the page where you will be logging in. This is the specific a portal for CUNY users. So you can go ahead and click on it, and you will see a screen like this, and then you will simply go into sign in. When you sign in, you always make sure that you have to log in using your CUNY login credentials, and that is your first name, that last name, followed by the 2 digits, which are the last 2 digits of your CUNY MPOL ID. So if you follow those instructions, you will be able to log into your account. In this case, I'm already logged in. That's why the browser takes me directly into my account. There's also the option to download the client. Okay. And I see a question, if I want you to log in, that's up to you. If you want to follow along, that's totally up to you if you have the ability to do that with your browser. If not, you can simply follow along what I'm doing. This is being recorded and you will be able to access this at a later point. You may not want to watch the whole thing, but maybe a specific segment, and that it's totally fine. Okay. So there's an option to download the client. As I was saying, you are free. You're right. It's recommended that you do it because that will allow you to simply open the client and be able to see all of your information without having to log in every single time. I'm going to show you the client briefly as well as we move along in the session. But right now we're in our account settings, okay, in our account page. You can tell that you're in your CUNY account because if you click on your picture, in my case, I set up a specific picture. I uploaded a specific picture. If you do not see that, you will see a default image picture right here, and then you will be able to see this is your CUNY account, and then this says license. That means you have the institutional license to Zoom. In case sometimes users have reported that they log into the website, but for some reason it takes them to their personal account, you can always sign out and then log in again. And then if it still does not work, sometimes the problem may be solved by clearing your cookies in your browser, depending on the browser that you use. That may be the case. You can tell here that I am in my CUNY account. And then right on meetings, the first item in our agenda that we're going to tackle, it's going to be the setup personal meeting ID. And the option is going to be right here. Once I get into my account, I'm going to see the upcoming meetings that I have. And then this is my personal meeting room. Once again, this is always helpful to use, especially when you want to have quick impromptu meetings with colleagues. You simply tell them, give me one moment. Thank you, Oscar, for letting me know. Okay, I think you're able to see that right now, right, Oscar?
Correct.
Great, thank you. So thank you for letting me know. So once again, I am on the Zoom website. If you go into the CUNY, into the link that I shared, you will be able to see this screen. Simply go ahead and click on sign in, and it's going to take you to the login page. Use your CUNY login credentials, and here we are. Here's what I was saying. If you click on your picture right here, oops, sorry. If you click on your picture, you will be able to see that you are a licensed CUNY user right here. And then now we're going to be in our personal room. Like I said, this is normally used when you want to have impromptu meetings with colleagues or even with students, and you want to set this up. You don't necessarily have to schedule a meeting per se with a day and the time and duration and all of that. You can always enter your CUNY your personal room in Zoom and then invite anyone. By default right here, let me just remove this right here. If I'm going to my personal meeting room and I click on edit, I will be able to edit the basic settings of how my personal room is going to work. I always recommend enabling the waiting room. And why is this? Because if you're having this impromptu meetings with a student, with a colleague, you always want to make sure that when you start the meeting, it's only you. And then the waiting room feature will allow you to see who is trying to get into your meeting room. And I will show you a screenshot of what that looks like in a moment so that you can see, okay, I see that Oscar is trying to join the meeting. I actually have a meeting with him, so I'm going to admit him. And it's always helpful to do that. When you have classes, for instance, when you're scheduling a class session on Zoom for your class every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's sometimes inconvenient to have the waiting room because you would have to admit every single student. So that's a different case. But in this case, you want to have the waiting room enabled so you can see who's trying to get into your room. You can enable a passcode. It's always recommended for security reasons. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't. It's recommended that you do. And if you want to add an extra level of security, you can always enable the passcode. And then the video settings right here, that means that when you enter your personal meeting room, by default, you will enter with the video off, and then you can manually turn it on. Similar for the participant, you will see the participant is off. That means when you enter your personal meeting room, it will be off by default, but they can choose to turn it on. So far, you will see that these options are similar and the same options as when you schedule a regular meeting. They do not change, all right? The only difference is the personal meeting ID, which I will go back to in just a moment. The rest of the options, the audio, it's always helpful to have both. I personally recommend that because the other people that you're meeting with may not necessarily be joining from a desktop or from a computer. They may be joining from their phones. So it's always to have both enabled. And then these meeting options in particular, I don't have any checked. The enable join before host, it's by default going to contradict my waiting room, meaning I have to open the meeting room and then I will see who is in my waiting room before I let them in myself. So, and then these other options will apply in case you're trying to do this for a class, right? But in this case, we're trying to set up our meeting space only for meeting, impromptu with colleagues or one-on-one with students, as we will see during office hours in a moment. In terms of the personal meeting ID, if I go ahead and click on right here on change, you will be able to, you can change this number. You can either memorize it, what you have there, or you can always put it. In my case, what I did is I changed it to my phone number in my office so that I can always remember that. And whenever I tell colleagues that we can have a meeting, I send them this number and they can go ahead and join me there. So that is the meeting room. And I just want to make sure that Oscar, are there any questions so far? Let me open the chat.
No questions.
Okay.
Just background picture.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead. Now, how do we go ahead and, let me see, give me one moment here. So if I go into my profile right here, let me remove the chat. And again, my colleague Oscar is helping me monitor the chat. So in case there are any questions, Oscar, feel free to unmute yourself and raise your questions. I'm still on the browser, all right? I'm still on the browser. And before I was in meetings, now I'm going to go into my profile. In our agenda, we have our personal meeting ID, but also our link. The link is always helpful as well because it's almost like a direct link to your meeting space. And you can share this with whomever you want, with people that you regularly meet with, or with students if you want to meet with them on a one-on-one basis. If you see right here under my profile, see the personal link, you can go ahead and click on customize this, and you can enter any personal ID or link that you want to share, that you want to customize. By default, it may be a random series of numbers and letters. But you can always customize. As you can see, I put in my first name and last name just so that it's easy to remember for me. And then I can tell someone right away, let's meet on Zoom on this link. You can share either your link or you can share your your personal meeting room. It's either or. And I'm going to show you how that's going to work in just a moment. Okay. Again, all of this is on the website. I want to show you very quickly the clients. And for that, I'm going to share my whole desktop. Okay. And now you should be able to see my client right here. And if you have a client right now downloaded either on Windows or on Mac, you're able to download a client. You will only have to log in once. And then after that, it's much easier. You don't have to log in every single time that you open it. One thing that I want to remind everyone now that we're here is if you do have the client, you open the client, whether you're on Windows or on a Mac. Right now, I am working on a Mac computer. If you click on your picture right here, you will be able to see this option, check for updates. It's always important to check for updates. And as we will see, I'm going to talk about a feature on Breakout Groups that was particularly helpful, and it's been released only with those who have updated their Zoom clients. So if you click on it, it will tell you whatever updates you have available. In my case, I did this already, so it will show me that I have the latest version. That's always helpful to do. Also, because Zoom may release security updates. So in case they are trying to address any particular security issue, they will release an update, and then users will be invited to do that, to update their clients. You see the join here button right here. I'm not able to click on it because I myself am in the meeting. But if you click on it, we will see the same thing on the Zoom websites. If I click, let's see, if I click on join a meeting from the Zoom website will ask me either for a meeting ID or for a personal link name. So this is when the other user will be able to enter your information, and they will be able to enter your meeting space. Again, this is without the necessity of having to schedule an actual meeting on Tuesday, 7:30 to 8:30. You can always have these impromptu meetings and use Zoom similarly as when you do your regular classes. So let me go back. In here, the other thing that I wanted to share as we talk about your personal meeting room is very quickly go into, I am on the website, very quickly go into the settings. When we go into the settings, these are the basic account settings for each user, and it's always recommended that you visit this and pay attention to the many features available. There's plenty here that I'm not going to cover, but there's one particular one that I want to make sure that I tell you, and that is going to be the breakout groups. So you can do Control F on your computer, or you can scroll down to in meeting basic. And the breakout group feature right here, make sure that this is on, okay? This means that it's off. This means that it's on, okay? So when you turn this on, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to see the breakout group in your meeting space, and I will show you how that looks like in just a moment. A lot of users, I believe this is by default off, if I'm not mistaken, but I have had a lot of faculty write to me saying, I don't see the breakout room when I'm in a meeting. Sometimes if you're hosting the meeting and you yourself do not see it, probably is because in the settings it hasn't been enabled. So again, you go to you log into your account on the browser, you go into settings, and then you scroll down to where you see breakout groups, and you will be able to see it, and you will be able to make sure that it's on. Most of the times that is the issue that happens. If you are in a meeting that is hosted by someone else who does not have breakout groups, breakout rooms enabled, don't get confused. You may not see it because you're in their meeting, all right? But if you're hosting the meeting, you are the one in control. It's your account, so you should be able to see if you have enabled this. Again, all of this in the settings. I mentioned that in here, there's plenty of options. One that I will mention is a virtual background. All of these options you can turn on or off in the settings. So I highly recommend that you take the time to visit this in your own time and then check each option. Zoom, I think, does a very good job in explaining what each option is. So take a look at what's virtual background. It says customize your background to keep your environment private from sharing from others in a meeting. So right now what I'm doing is I'm using a virtual background that LaGuardia provided. I'm going to show you where to find all of those in just a moment. Again, all of these are in your account settings, and I highly recommend that you take a look at them at a later point.
Pablo, can you
Yep.
briefly talk about the host key?
Yes, the host key right here, the host key right here allows you to, and maybe someone from IT is in the session, hopefully they are, so they can clarify, but the host key will allow you to claim host permissions when you join a session from your phone. All right. When you are in the desktop environment, you will be able to have full control of your environment, of your meeting, as I will show you in a moment. But when you're joining from the phone, you can claim host permissions. I think I hear someone. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just the host key.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think, is this Ramash?
Yeah,
Yes, thank you, Ramash. I appreciate it very
no
much.
problem.
So again, the host key will be a functionality that you will use when you're joining from the phone, meaning when you're dialing into your meeting and you as the host want to claim permissions as the host of the meeting, you can use this host key so that you're given all of those controls. I haven't tested this myself, but I know that is what the feature is for. So other than that, you will not normally encounter any instance where, regular instance where you will be using your host key other than that, okay? All right, so yes.
Pablo, Sean Galvin is saying is he's saying is it always going to be the same number?
For the host key, yes, it is.
Yes.
For the host key, yes, it is. The number, it's not going to change. The number,
It
it's not
doesn't
going to
change.
change. It does not
Yeah.
change, correct. So let me just move you along here. I wanted to show you this. Oscar, I think you're seeing the slideshow right now. Is that correct?
We're seeing slideshow.
Okay, so I wanted to show you this. I'm going to show you the Zoom environment in just a moment, but I wanted to show you what happens when you are in your personal meeting room and then somebody, I always tell people, just imagine, you in your office and someone knocks on the door. That's what the waiting room is basically. So you get a notification and it tells you this person is coming into your, it wants to get into your room. You pick through the door and say, oh, it's Oscar. So you can either hit admit or remove. You can also send them a message. So you can say, hey, I'll be with you in 5 minutes, or I am speaking to someone. I will be there in just a minute. So they can be left in the waiting room. They will be seeing a screen that says the host will let you in momentarily, okay? And as you can see on the screen, it says in meeting, I myself am on the meeting and Oscar is on the waiting room. So that's what's gonna look like, okay? So we're gonna move ahead to the breakout rooms. For that, I'm gonna show you my Zoom environment, okay, so that you're able to see. It's very important that you visit the settings on your account, as I mentioned a moment ago, as I showed you a moment ago, so that you can make sure that the breakout rooms feature is available. I'm also going to show you the polls and how that works. All of that in our breakout, in our Zoom meeting.
Pablo, question.
Yeah.
So the waiting room, is it only in the personal room?
That's a great question. No, it is not. You can enable the waiting room either on a class or in your personal meeting room. You can enable it or disable it. CUNY does have a security protocol so that you always enable it to allow a layer of security so that you know beforehand who is joining the meeting. Obviously, in a class setting, that's a little inconvenient because you have 25 people you have to admit, or if not more. So obviously use that cautiously, but in your personal meeting room, I personally recommend always enable it because you never know who wants to get into your space, into your room, right? I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to share my whole desktop so that I can show you now the fun part. You will now see my entire Zoom meeting environment. You may see yourself. I'm only doing this for the purposes of the training. As you can see, I can see multiple video thumbnails on my screen. It's always important to familiarize ourselves with the views. They're up on the top. You will always have the speaker or the gallery view. If I see the speaker, I can see my colleague Oscar. It's in spotlight now, and he actually has a nice background right there. But if I switch over to the gallery, I will be able to see everyone. I personally enjoy the gallery view because I'm able to see all of the video thumbnails that I have. And then if you were to have more students, you will be able to see and toggle from page 1 to page 2 if you have more. Right now, I am working on a 13-inch MacBook Pro, and my real estate screen is only so much. So I'm only able to see about 30 of you. If you were to have a bigger screen, let's say a ultra wide monitor or maybe a 30-something inch screen, maybe you will be able to see more if you're in a large room with, if you're in a class with a number of people, with a lot of people. So that really depends, okay? One of the cool features that Zoom released a couple of days ago, and I mentioned that if you update your client, you will be able to see this, is the ability to rearrange specific video thumbnails on your screen. Before, you were not able, with previous versions, you were not able to do that. But now let's say that I want to put my colleague Oscar right here, and I want to put myself just so that I have the two facilitators up on the top left, and then be able to arrange my students in any specific way if I want to. So that's a very cool feature that Zoom released a couple of days ago that comes with version 5.3. If you update your client, I will show you how to do that. You will be able to enjoy that as well. But let's get right into the meat of the session, which is the breakout groups and the poll. Let me start with the breakout groups. As you can see, I already see the breakout rooms right here at the bottom. This is because I enabled the breakout rooms in my settings page. And again, in case you do not see it, make sure that it's enabled on your settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And here, there are two options that already existed before, but there is a last option that's really cool that Zoom released a couple of days ago. This is let participants choose a room. And essentially what this does is you can create multiple rooms, and then the students can choose to join either from one or on the other one, and they can swap around. That's a really cool feature. I have not tested it myself, but it's necessary that every single user who is in the call, in order to enjoy this feature, they have to be in the latest version. So be mindful of that. If you want to test that out, make sure that everyone in the call who's testing it out has version 5.3. But the two options that I have on the top are the options that have always existed, and that is to assign automatically or assign manually. Okay, you can shuffle people around. I'm going to start with the assign automatically. I'm going to go ahead and click on create. Once I click on create, I'm going to be able to see all of this. And what I did is assigned automatically. That means that Zoom automatically populated my my screen with a number of people into each room. I can always go ahead and just pull this up so that I can see all of my rooms, and then I can just pull this down so that I can see who is in which room. I can also rename. Let's say that I want not to be this room 1, but I want this to be group A. And I can go ahead and rename this as I want. I can also delete the room if I want. Now, let's say that I want certain people to be in one place, in one group and not in the other. I can always shuffle around. Let me grab my colleague Salih right here, and then I'm going to move him to room number 3 because that's actually where I want him. So it's as easy as that, right? If you hit on exchange right here, then it's going to swap Oscar, let's say, with someone else. I'm going to go back to my colleague Salih right here and exchange Oscar and Salih. I can always do that. And then all of this is with me on the background, meaning these rooms are not open. I'm just setting this up before I open them, okay? So I'm just adjusting the members in my groups and all of that. And then I see that I can see 7 people in here, 8 people here, 9 people here. All of this without opening the rooms. Once I'm done with with setting up and I know my groups are the way that I want them, I'm going to go ahead and click on open rooms, okay? And that's what's going to launch the breakout room, what's going to launch the breakout room feature. I'm not gonna open that, but before I do that, before I continue, I do wanna show you additional settings. And I'm gonna move this up so that you can see clearly. So if you see the gear button right here, when you're setting up your groups, there's very cool options right here, okay? And let's just spend some time on this. The allow participants to, the first option, allow participants to choose the room, is the first option, the release that I mentioned a moment ago. This is very helpful if everyone has the latest version, 5.3, it's really cool. Now, obviously right now, I'm not gonna test that out, so I'm just not gonna check it. The second one says, allow participants to return to the main session at any time. So if you want to open the groups, and let's say that you want students to return to the main group, you can give them the option to do that. But if you uncheck this, that means that students are going to be in the breakout group and they're not going to be able to return. They're gonna have to wait for you until you close the rooms, okay? And then this option right here, it's really helpful. Automatically move all assigned participants into the breakout groups. What does this mean? This is, and I always recommend to check this off, especially when you're working with users that you may not be sure how familiar they are with Zoom. What this means is that the moment that you open the breakout rooms, they will be taken directly into their respective breakout room. If you do not choose this, what's going to happen is the user is going to receive a message saying the host is inviting you to group A, and then the person has to manually click on it in order to enter the breakout room. So I always recommend turning this on because it makes things easier for the user. Automatically move participants to the assigned breakout room. You can also set the rooms to end after a certain time. You have to manually open the rooms in order for you to start the breakout room activity. You always have to do that manually, but you can set Zoom to automatically close the rooms after a certain time. And I always do this with my students. I tell them, I'm going to give you an icebreaker activity only for 5 minutes. And I explain all of this, and then I set this to 5 minutes only, and then automatically after 5 minutes, they're all back. That way I don't have to look at the time, and I don't have to set the time and then bring them back. So it's always helpful to use this if this is what helps you. But if not, in your class, you can always turn this off, and then you can, if you want to give them 15 minutes, but then in the end, 5 more minutes, you can go and do that. The countdown after closing breakout rooms, I'm sure that many of you have experienced this when you're in a breakout group talking to people, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're moved into the main room. There's a countdown after closing the breakout groups. In other words, once I, as the host, close the breakout groups, meaning bring everybody back, there's going to be a countdown. I can give them, I think the maximum it's 120 seconds. But you can give them 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. I always give them a minute. What this means is when I click on close breakout groups, students in the breakout rooms will have a minute to sort of like wrap it up. They're going to have a countdown that says you're being taken back to the main room in 10, 9, 7, so forth. So that's always helpful. Again, I'm sure that many of us have been in those rooms where suddenly, boom, we're taken back to the main room, and then, oh, I was saying this, I was talking about this. So that's always helpful to have as the host, have that. All of this, again, all of this is on my meeting space. I hit breakout groups, and then I went ahead and I have these groups right here, and I go into the settings to reveal all the settings that I just went over a couple of minutes ago. I'm going to go ahead and click on recreate because I want to show you the second part. That was the assign manually. Remember, this is the assign automatically, meaning Zoom told me how many rooms do you want? I by default left it at 3, but you can change this, right? And then if I switch this, Zoom is going to tell me how many people per room, right? So, but now I'm going to choose the second option, assign manually. I'm going to hit recreate. And when I do that, what's going to happen is I'm going to have now 6 rooms because that's what I chose, but there's no one there's no one in any room. I basically have the rooms only. Now I have to populate them. If you know that certain people will go into this room and so forth, you might want to do that if you have a manageable size of students. Let's say that you want to rename this to Team A. In case you want to know how to rename this, you can do that, right? And then now, because I'm going to assign my students manually, I'm going to go ahead and click on assign, all right? And here I have, this is a little bit hectic when you have a lot of people, as you will see, but when you have 10, 15 people, it's fairly manageable. So let's say that I want my colleagues, Candace and Denise and Evelyn to be right here. I'm just gonna go ahead and leave them on Team A. I'm gonna go into room number 2, and I want this to be Team B. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit assign. I'm going to hit my colleagues, Mary, Martha, and Martha right here again, and so forth. You get the idea. If you have 15, 20 students, you can do this manually. You can have Zoom do it automatically. There's multiple options, okay? And then the rest of the settings that I explained a moment ago continue to be the same. If you want to open these rooms, I'm not going to do it right now, but if you want to open these rooms, you simply go ahead and click on open rooms, and then you might want to check the settings right here to make sure that it's all right. And then once you're done, once you have opened the rooms, this button will become into closed breakout rooms. So once you hit close, everyone comes back to the main room. You can always add a room if you want. Or you can always delete a room if you want. Do you want to remove this and so forth? So let's say that I don't want any of these rooms. I can go ahead and remove them. Let me hit pause here, and any questions so far? Okay, it seems that we're good. Oscar, are we good so far?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, I want to show you something quickly here as well. I want to pop this out and close. Again, I'm showing you my...
Pablo, I think Evelyn has a question.
Yeah.
Can you unmute yourself, Evelyn?
I just was wondering, okay, so let's say you give titles to the groups, but you want to randomly assign them. Those two things don't connect, right?
You can do both. You can have a specific rooms with a specific titles, and then you can randomly assign them.
Okay, so you don't have to, okay, that's basically my question.
Yeah. I'm showing you my meeting, my Zoom meeting space, and I want to show you a couple of other things, and then I'm going to go into the polling. The one thing is, if you open the chat, probably by default, you're going to see this floating window that pops up. I always recommend, and again, I'm working on a 13-inch screen right now. I always recommend to merge this to my meeting window. And the way that I do this is if I go into this 3-dot right here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on merge to meeting window. What that's going to do is that's going to merge it, and then it gives me the flexibility of having a better arrangement in my real estate, which I want to make sure that I maximize because I only have 13-inch screen right now. If I hit on participants, it will be the same. I have this pop-up window. So if I want to see my colleague Sean and I cannot see, I have to move this around. It's a little complicated when you're working. So similarly, you go right here, and then you can, oops, I think this option is right here. Lock meeting. What was this meeting?
Merge to meeting window, Pablo.
Merge to meeting window, thank you. So you click right here, and then it will merge it to the meeting window. Again, this is so that you can have a better, more effective space arrangement. As you can see right now, I have to now move to the second page if I want to see the rest of my colleagues. I can move back and forth. All right. So I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to now get into the polling.
So one more question before we get into that,
Go
Pablo.
ahead.
So Denise is asking, does the webinar breakout room feature work the same way?
That's a good question. Well, I can tell you that our institutional license does not include a webinar feature. The webinar feature is a different license that I know CUNY does not have. We only have the meeting feature. Now, I have used the webinar feature. I do not think that it works, but I can always get back to you on that. But I can tell you that the CUNY institutional license does not include license to webinar. So right now we are in our meeting. In our meeting space, not the webinar. This is not a webinar, although technically it is. The meeting space feature that we're using on Zoom, it's called the meeting space. Okay. So
one more question, Pablo. Yeah. So can you explain the share screen option with breakout rooms?
The share screen option, sure. So if I go into my, right now you're seeing my meeting space. And if I go into the share screen, I'm gonna see, you see this white screen, right, Oscar?
Correct.
Okay, so if I see all of these options, this will give me the ability to share anything on my screen, okay? So if I go into, this is my desktop, it means that I'm gonna share everything on my desktop. And if you want to, shuffle between a Word document and your browser and a spreadsheet and a PowerPoint presentation, I recommend that you share your desktop because that will give you the ability to share multiple items, multiple applications at the same time without having to reshare again. But if you share one specific item, let's say that right now I'm going to share my Google Chrome browser right here. I'm going to go ahead and hit share, and you're now seeing my Google screen, right? My Google slide. But I'm actually I'm going to go into my browser, and if I want to shuffle around, I'm not going to be able to do that effectively if I'm sharing only one item at a time. So again, if you only want to share your PowerPoint presentation, you can always share that single, application. But if you want to share multiple items, multiple applications, I recommend sharing the desktop. Okay. Now, in addition to this, these are applications that I'm sure you're more familiar with, but right here, it's a cool feature, which is the whiteboard. And the whiteboard, it's particularly helpful if you're teaching math, although that's what I have heard, but obviously it's helpful in many other disciplines. If you click on it, it will basically create a whiteboard that you can write on and demonstrate any kind of drawing or any other kind of activity to your students. It's a little not as efficient in my opinion, although I have to be honest and say that I haven't used it extensively. If I were to share it right now, I'm gonna have to use my mouse so that I can write. Now you can also connect this to your iPad or an iPhone and use the whiteboard and use the Apple Pencil or any other kind of tablet and a stylus. And if you do that, I believe you will be able to use it more effectively. But right now, if I share this whiteboard, I'm going to be able to write something, but it's going to have to do with my actual mouse. And as I'm sure you will imagine, it's not as efficient to write with your mouse. So
Pablo, so we have 3 more questions.
Go right
You
ahead.
can look in the chat. So the first one is, so again, so how students cannot share my screen in the breakout rooms, is that correct? How can you share the assignments that they should be working on in the breakout room? So that's 2 questions. Second one is, I was not able to turn off the whiteboard
Oh, I
off.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me go with the whiteboard. I think if you simply do a new share, every time you share something, you will be able to see a new share button, and then you simply switch the application from the whiteboard and then you share to something else. Or you will always hit the stop sharing. And right now, you probably don't see anything, you only see me, but you know, that means that I've stopped shared completely, right? Now, the other question is, in terms of the sharing screen for participants, I'm going to draw your attention to the security button right here on every meeting. Every time that you are in a meeting, you will see this. You as the host will see this, not when you're the participant, but when you are the host, you will be able to see this. And I normally use this with my students. If I want them to share something in their screen amongst themselves, I always allow participants to share screen. By default, Zoom disabled this for security reasons because there were many different issues that happened. But now it's off by default, but you can turn it on. And if I share, if I click on share, allow participants to share their screen, anyone right now will be able to share. But by default, it's normally off. So if you want your students to share their screens, I would recommend going into the security and click on allow participants to share screen. Now, the other question, I believe it's about sort of like an approach, and I have learned this almost on the go. When I tell my students to work in a breakout room, I always find that they are sometimes confused, they don't pay attention. So I always spend a good amount of time explaining to the whole group what the activity is going to be. And then I send them into the breakout group. So I would recommend that, especially now that the activities in distance learning are very different than, you know, in the face-to-face, you could walk around and you could see which group was doing best versus the other. But right now in here, it's different, right? So that is what you can do. You can always explain, take the time to explain the feature, the activity, and then send them to the breakout groups. And then if you want them to share their screen, you can always allow them to share their screen if that's what you want. Okay. I want to go over a couple of
Just
other.
one more question, Pablo.
Yeah.
So how many participants, or in this case students, does Zoom allow per account?
According to our license, it's up to 300 users that can join in one single meeting. With the free basic account, it was up to 100 only. If you had a paid account, I'm sorry, it was up to 100. But with your CUNY institutional license, you can bring up to 300 people into the same meeting, and you can create up to 50 breakout rooms. If you want 51, I would recommend doing something alternatively, that you have up to 50 breakout rooms that you can create and 300 participants in one time. You may also remember that the basic account gave you a 40-minute limit. This is no longer the case with this account, with CUNY accounts. You have unlimited time. It's not unlimited. You can have up to, I believe they say, no more than 24 hours. So unless you don't want to teach for 24 hours, I assume you will not, you will be fine. So unlimited time, 300 people, and 50 breakout rooms if you want. Oops, I shouldn't have clicked this too quick. All right, so I'm gonna close this for now, and you're still seeing my screen, and that's exactly what I want because I want to show you the polling. Polling very similar to the breakout room. I will see it because I have enabled it in my settings account. So in case you are the host in a meeting and you do not see it, make sure that you check your settings, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and click on polls. I always recommend using polls for the purposes of creating just icebreaker activities. I never recommend using polls for quizzes or anything like that because it's never, it's not as intuitive as you will see in a moment. And also there's some limitations. So I have a poll. I don't have anything on this poll, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and click on add a question. When I do this, this is gonna take me to the browser so that I can set up my question. And Oscar, you're still seeing my browser with my add a poll window, correct?
Yeah, we're seeing that screen.
Okay, great. So I'm gonna enter a name for this poll. I'm just gonna put poll test number 1. You can put, session 1 or whatever the name you want. You can always set so that users are responding anonymously, or you can get their names. So it will say user Oscar responded this to this question. So you can choose whether that's your case or not. And then here you can type your question. So I'm just going to say, what day is today? And then here are the options that I will be given. So I can say Monday, I can say Thursday, and I can say Friday. Okay. Now, the only options that you have right now, it's either the user chooses a single choice or the user chooses multiple choice. Those are the only types of questions that you can generate in Zoom poll. If you're thinking of adding a question that is, how are you feeling today? Tell me in one word, how do you feel? Unfortunately, there's no open-ended questions available. So I'm just going to choose this. You can add as many choices as you want. If I want to add a question, it's going to be the same type of question that I can choose. I'm just going to delete this. So there's only one question, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So I just want to show you very quickly how that looks like on my. Now I'm back to my meeting, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit on poll again, and now I see the question that I created. So right now you're not seeing that question because I didn't launch it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my share, and then I'm simply going to go ahead and hit launch poll. Once I hit on launch poll, you should now be able to see it. I want you to take a moment and respond.
So while they're responding, Paulo, just can you use poll for attendance? That was one of the questions.
I'm trying to think. I don't think you can use it for attendance because, as you can see, those are the only types of questions that you can generate. Well, actually, if you ask a question and everyone is on your room in your session, and everyone has a name, a specific, their accurate name, you can technically ask a question and then choose the option to not be anonymous, and then everyone who answered that question will be marked as present on the attendance. So you can do that. The only caveat though, and I'm going to end this poll right now, and I'm going to share the results so that you can see them on your screen. The only caveat though is that if a user is joining your class and joined from, let's say, an iPhone and did not change their name, and you did not alert them to change their names, you will not be able to see who the actual user was. It will simply say user iPhone said the answer to this question, right? So I'm going to stop sharing for now, and I want to share again my desktop. Okay, so I want to close this, and I want to close this again. So you're seeing again my screen. Now you probably have a couple of questions already in your mind, and I'm sure you do because many people ask the same. So when I asked for, when I clicked on polling, And this is what you see now. This is the number of people who responded. So I wish it was Friday. I'm looking forward to Friday. So I had to create a question right on the spot, right? Now the question is, do I have to do it on the spot? The answer is no. I did it intentionally so that I can show you how you can do it, because you can imagine that if you have to do that during your class, that's very problematic, right? But let me switch modes and let me go to my actual account. And I'm just gonna go into my meetings, and let's say that I have the next session. All right, I'm gonna have this next session next week. If I go into my actual meeting that already is scheduled, all right, I'm not gonna edit the meeting. I'm simply going to to see the meeting information. I'm gonna go in here, and then at the bottom on my Zoom account on the browser, I will be able to hit poll right here. And I can go ahead. I created one already, which was for another purpose. But here I can go ahead and add another poll, and I can do this ahead of time. So if you're scheduling your class for the next few weeks, you can go ahead and go into your Zoom account, check the meeting info, and then go ahead and add the question. And this is the same interface that we looked at a moment ago. So you can do that ahead of time. And when you do that, the question will be saved on that meeting. And when you are starting the meeting, the day of and the time of the meeting, when you hit poll, you will simply be able to see the polls already created there. So you don't have to do it on the spot. You can create it ahead of time. I want to show you back on the website, and I am now on the account, on my website. I logged in, and if I head over to reports, I'm going to go over to reports, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on meetings. When I go into meetings, this is the report, self-explanatory. It's going to give me the information about the meetings that I've had. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on poll report, and I'm going to look for that report that I did at any particular session. So if you run a session on Saturday and you run a poll, you can go ahead and look for that report right here. I am on my account. I go into reports. I go into meetings, and then right here, I'm going to choose this option, poll report. There's a couple of things that I want to mention here. First, these reports are available for a month only, meaning if you did a poll on your class sometime in September, and you're now in December wanting to finalize your grades, and you want to look back for the poll reports on that day in September, the report will not be there. All right, so you have to be careful with that. You have to look for reports that are within the 1 month period preceding the time when you're looking for the report. If you're looking for that, you're simply going to see, I'm not sure if I did one poll for this, but I'm going to go ahead and click on generate. I'm just going to go ahead and click on continue. I think there's no polling right here if I'm mistaken, but
We have 3 questions, Pablo.
go ahead.
So how are the chat and poll functions different for asking students questions? What is the live stream option, and what is the registration report?
The registration report, I didn't fully demo that. I only went to that section for the purposes of pulling the polling report. Let me just share this so that I don't let me organize my windows here. So the registration report, if you enable a meeting with a registration required, which is essentially what you did to get into this meeting, you will go into that section to pull the names and email addresses of the people who registered. I only went to that page for the purposes of pulling out a polling report. I did not intend to show you that. I can show you that in another session, but that's the same section where you pull the reports, basically of everyone who registers for a session, for a meeting, if you enable the registration as you did for, as you register for this session. The other question was about
the live stream option.
The live stream option, that is all in the settings. So if you go back to the settings account, when I showed you at the very beginning, remember it's a long screen of settings where we enable the breakout groups. If you enable the settings for, live streaming, and let me show you again on here. If you enable the settings for live streaming, you will be able to see the live stream on YouTube and Facebook. And it will also give you the option to stream to other services, I believe, but I only enabled YouTube and Facebook. And essentially, if you click in here, it will take you to the process to basically broadcast your meeting via a YouTube account that you have or via a Facebook account that you have. So you can basically open up your meeting to anyone in the world if you want to showcase that in your Facebook or YouTube channels.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Another question. So with multiple polls being seen, can multiple polls be seen as the host, and can you change the sequence of orders?
I don't think you can change the sequence I don't think you can change the sequence. What I have done is I've always used them in the order that I wanted them to. In this case, I only have one. Let me see. I think I'm able to go back. I don't think you're able to shuffle them around. I find it useful for the purpose of only checking my class's understanding on a specific topic. I've never used it for attendance, I'll be honest with you. And also I find it limited that it does not allow me to put open-ended questions or any other kind of format question other than what you saw. So you can either choose a single choice or multiple choice. That's all the options that you have. It is helpful, but at the same time, it's not so helpful depending on what you're looking for. Yeah.
And just two more questions. So can we use the registration report to take attendance? And can we know how long someone is in the class or meeting?
Yeah. So let me go into my Zoom account. I'm going to show you I think you're able to see my account, right, Oscar?
Correct.
Okay. So right now I am on the reports. A moment ago, I took you to the meeting so that we can see the polling report. Now in here, let me just do this right now then. If you set up a meeting with the registration required, this is where you're going to find the meeting. All right. So let's say that I run this, for instance, at 12 o'clock and I want to know who registered. So I'm going to go into here. This one did require registration. So I'm going to go ahead and check all registrant, and then it's going to load and it's going to generate an Excel sheet. And then it's going to tell me now you can download. This is the one that I just downloaded. This is the one that I just ran. So I can go ahead and download this and it will give me a spreadsheet with the names and the users of who registered. Now, the next question was, can you see how long a user was in the call? That's not necessarily here, that's for registration, but it's still in the same place. If I go into reports, this time I'm gonna go to usage, all right? I'm gonna go to usage, and then here I'm gonna see more reports that will give me the information as to the users in a particular meeting, okay? You also have to be cognizant that this is the same within a 1 month period. So if you're looking for in December to, you're looking for this information from a September session in December, you're not gonna be able to find it because you always have to look at that 1 month period. I'm gonna look for one particular session that happened on the 12th, just so that you can see. It's this session that I'm looking for right now. And as you can see, this is all the information about the meeting. This is the duration of the meeting. It lasted 108 minutes. And this is the number of participants in the call, 30. Now, if I click on it, what I'm gonna see is I'm gonna see this screen that will show me the specific names of the people and then the number of minutes that they were in the call, okay? Now, the tricky thing here is that in some cases, if a user did not rename himself or herself, you're only going to see this, and that will not be useful for attendance, right? Also, if a user has Wi-Fi problems and keeps getting bumped out of the call and comes back, Zoom will log that user in. So you might want to check the show unique users, and that will eliminate any duplicates, and it will show you the single users with a single email address. But in some cases, as you can see, it may not be as accurate. So this is the number of minutes that each person spent on the call. Again, all of this is on the reports, usage, and then if you happen to see many more columns here, it's probably because you have all of this enabled. You can always uncheck, let's say department, group, has room, creation time, and source. So I just basically shrunk my list, and it's much easier for me to read now. I'm looking for this, 40 minutes, 5 people, and look at this. So 80 minutes and 38 people. So that's how you can get access to the information of who is in your call and who, how long the users have been in your sessions.
Pablo, there's a question and asking how can we create a meeting with the registration form?
Oh, sure. If I go into, I'm just going to go into here. Now I am on my account. You're able to see my account, right, Oscar?
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm on my account, I'm going to go right here and then I'm going to go schedule a meeting. The schedule a meeting will be exactly the same. Okay, so I'm just going to call this FYS 101. This is going to be on Saturday, the 26th. And then it's going to be at, say, 3 p.m., 1 hour. It's not a recurrent meeting. And then here's the option, registration required. So if you hit registration required, it will basically be that users cannot, cannot access the Zoom information until they register. So I'm going to go ahead and check that. I'm going to leave this for the purposes of this activity as is. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So this is my class, FYS 101. I went ahead and schedule it. Now the registration link is here. And this is exactly, instead of me sending the invitation as people normally do, I'm simply going to go ahead and click on this registration link. And then this will be the registration link that I'm going to send my students. So this is just filling information that that I had previously filled out. So they will see it as blank. And then you can add the description if you want so that they know. And then they will simply register. And then once they register, you will be able to see it right here. Okay. Now in the registration, the default registration will always ask you for the first name, the last name, and the email address. You can add more. And if you actually noticed in my registration, I added a couple of additional questions that I wanted to know. So if you go right here, I went to my meeting, right? Just gonna make sure that I am guiding you. This is my meeting. I click on it. I'm not editing. I'm simply looking at the meeting information. I go all the way to the bottom. Under registration, right now it's a 0 because no one has registered, but I'm going to go ahead and click on view. When I click on view, that's where I'm going to be able to see who is registering for my meeting. And if I check this off, I can resend them the confirmation email, which is exactly what all of you got a moment ago before the session. Right here, I can also edit the registration, which is what I wanted to show you. So this means automatically approved, meaning that the moment that someone fills that out with correct information, they will automatically be given the Zoom information. You can choose this to manually approve, meaning that I have to review first your application, and then if I approve it, then you will receive a confirmation. And then there's these other options as well that you can check. The questions is what I wanted to address. All of these are questions available that you can add on the registration form. But you can add, let's say that you can add comments and questions. So you just go ahead and click on it. And then if I go ahead and click on add custom questions, I'm just going to go ahead and click short answer. Are you a new student? Just going to go ahead and click on short answer, and it's going to be a required question. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. I think I checked, yep, questions and comments, save all. So now my registration link hasn't changed. Actually, if I go back to the registration link and I simply hit upload, refresh, it's going to refresh to this is default information that I put before. Now you will be able to see that I added, are you a new student? And that was a custom question that I added, and I made it a required question. So yeah. Any other questions?
So how many co-hosts can be in a meeting?
How many
Co-hosts.
how many calls?
Co-host.
Oh, co-host. I'm sorry. I believe it's unlimited. Ramesh, maybe if you are there, you can help me clarify this. I believe it's unlimited. So for instance, right now I am the host, and I can, if I share this, I am the host right now. I'm going to go into my participants panel, and I can go ahead and make my colleague Oscar the co-host. Right now, it will say withdraw co-host permission because he already is a co-host, but I can always add, and anyone, let's say my colleague Candace right here, I can make her a co-host if I want to. So you can make, I think, an unlimited number of co-hosts. And co-host will have the same ability as the host, except the breakout rooms, from what I understand. So the breakout rooms, remember when I was sharing when I was adding the rooms and all of that, only the host can do that. So I learned that the hard way. So so if you wanted to know that, there you go. I want to let's see. I want to, because I'm aware of the time, we're over time, but I appreciate your patience. If I go right here, back to our slides with some final recommendations. If you're entering a meeting, it's always recommended to turn off your camera and then turn it on manually if that is your option too. The same for your students. We've always heard this recommendation from faculty, so we wanted to let you know. If the students choose to turn their cameras on, please consider using a virtual background. I'm going to put the link on the, Oscar, I think in the Google Doc, one of them under resources is the virtual background. Maybe if you can put that on the chat. There's multiple images that you can download and use, as you can see, I'm doing right now. If you're using your personal meeting, you're using personal meeting room for office hours, enable the waiting room, as I mentioned, so that you know who's coming in. Consider asking the students to have a physical notebook. I always do that, even though I'm sure you already do already, but even though distance learning is happening mostly digitally, it's always good for them to have a notebook, a physical notebook to take notes and, you know, and use that. And update your desktop client and mobile apps regularly. And I can show you that very quickly as my colleague Oscar lets me know of any other questions. Any other questions, Oscar? Oscar, I think you're able to see my Zoom client, correct?
Yes, so there's a question if you can show how to do the update for the latest version of Zoom.
Great, great. Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to do. If you go into your desktop client, this applies to the client. If you are on Windows or on a Mac, it will always work the same. You simply click on your picture on the top right. You know you're a licensed user, and if you go down the list and click on check for updates. And if you click on it, it will show you the update that you need, more than likely the 5.3 version. In my case, I already have it, so I can simply hit done. And then if you do have the update available, it will load again. It probably will not load right now because you're in the meeting, but after the meeting, you are welcome to do that. And it always is recommended to do the updates so that you can be up to speed with any security issue that Zoom may have addressed. I wanted to show you very quickly on this Zoom document that I shared, the virtual background. It's resource number 9. This is what I was talking about a moment ago. LaGuardia put together this very nice set of images that you can download as virtual backgrounds. I'm going to pop this on the chat and in a moment, and you can simply, you know, choose any image that you want, and then you download, and then you can add it. The way that you add it to your account, if you go right here, you can go into the settings, and that will reveal all of the settings for your account. And then there's one that says, background and filters. And here you can simply hit the plus sign and then add image. I haven't used the add video. I don't know how it works. It should be fun, but the add image. And the cool thing is that the images will be saved already. So I have downloaded a couple already. You can always switch, and they will be ready and available.
Pablo, how do you get to that client screen that you have in front of you?
This client screen right here, you would have to download the client. You can go to the download center. Let me show you that link on the Zoom.
And I'm
If you-
posting that link at the.
Okay, great, thank you. If you go to the resource number 12, you can see in parentheses the download center. So this will allow you to download the client, whether you're on a Windows or on a Mac. And then once you have the client, you will be able to see this. Whether you are on a Windows or a Mac, you will always see your picture on the top right, and then go down to updates to update your software, and then the settings for you to add your virtual background. Okay, so it's 3:14. I want to thank you. Are there any other questions, Oscar, maybe?
So it was just about the background with green screens, but
Oh, right.
basically you don't need a green screen.
You do not need a green screen. If you want to be fancy, you want to have a more sophisticated background with more animated features, you're absolutely welcome to use a green screen. But the virtual I'm not using a green screen right now, and as you can see, it works perfectly fine. And I did a cool activity with my students where I told them where they came from by adding a picture on the background, and then we all guessed where everyone came from. That was a fun activity. You can do that as well if you choose to. It's fun ways to engage your class. Again, all of this if they choose to turn their cameras on. So that's up to you. Okay, so once again, thank you very much. I know we went over time, but we appreciate your time. Thank you for attending the session. Thanks, Oscar. Remember that this session is being recorded, and I'm going to share the link a little later today or by tomorrow with everyone. It's going to be on YouTube so that you can go back and watch segments of it if you want to revisit that. In the Google Doc that I shared, there's also additional dates for next week, tomorrow and next week if you want to sign up for another one. All right. Thank you very much. Once again, enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Bye, everyone.